Hello and welcome to Breakfast All Day, or should I say, bienvenidos. I'm Matt, that's Christy, that's Alonso. They are going to talk about a new movie called I Carry You With Me, Llevo Conmigo. It's a Spanish language film set in Mexico. I haven't had a chance to see it, but I hear wonderful things, and I believe Alonso will tell us all about it.
Yeah, this movie's great. I did not get to see it when it premiered at Sundance 2020, but it is now making its way into theaters in the U.S. It is the feature debut of documentary filmmaker Heidi Ewing. She did Boys of Baraka and Jesus Camp and Freakonomics, among many others. She also co-wrote, and this is a story about Ivan and Gerardo, who are guys in Mexico. We begin in contemporary New York. We understand that we're about to be treated to some flashbacks. Ivan is a guy who works in a restaurant, and he is middle-aged, but thinking back to his youth in Mexico, to his childhood, where his father sold tamales on the street, and that's where he sort of learned to love how to cook, but also sort of like secretly trying on the quinceañera dresses that his mother would make for the rich girls in the neighborhood. Then later on, as a young adult, Ivan has a son with a woman to whom he is not married, but is still in their lives, and because of that remains in the closet because he thinks that they're not going to let him see his own child if they know. He meets Gerardo at an after-hours club, and Gerardo, unlike Ivan, comes from money and is kind of bougie, works in the academic world, but he is out because he's it's harder for him to hide it, and so they begin a relationship that has various complications, and ultimately, because of various frustrations, both of them wind up coming to the United States. They flee into New York, undocumented, and make a life for themselves there, but then have to sort of contend with the choices that come with that. It's interesting, and with the pandemic in the last year, I think this movie maybe even has a more additional resonance than when it first screened at Sundance, because for a lot of people, you couldn't see your family over the year. You couldn't attend weddings or funerals or, the births of new babies. And it was all having to do it all via FaceTime and Zoom and try to maintain those family connections. And here you see these guys in New York dealing with the same stuff and not being able to go home, and knowing that if they go home, they're not going to be able to return to New York, and having to try and maintain relationships with loved ones and family members, through screens and at a distance. And it's also just this really powerful love story, and sort of you kind of come to understand what they're willing to sacrifice for each other, how each of them sort of makes the other one kind of grow up a little, or get out into the world more, and follow their own ambitions. It's a gorgeous movie, and it takes a turn that I did not see coming that just hit me like a real wallop, and I love this movie.
I really like a lot about it. I don't love it as much as you. The turn that you are referring to did not hit me like an emotional wallop. It kind of distracted me a bit. It took me out of it, and I had to go back and rewind it and make sure I wasn't missing anything.
Gotcha.
Because something happens, there's a shift, and I felt a little confused by it. And so I don't want to spoil it for folks who are going to watch it themselves, but the thing that changes did not really work for me. But for a long time, I was very much with them. And Heidi Ewing worked with Rachel Grady for a long time as a documentary team. They were nominated for an Oscar for Jesus Camp about 15 years ago. So this is her first solo directing feature. But what's interesting about it is that she brings this really cool combination of like a documentarian's eye for like realistic, tangible, specific details, like verite, a sort of verite eye into this gentleman's relationship and their lives. But then aesthetically, the tone of it is kind of impressionistic and kind of wispy and kind of gauzy at times. And so there's it's sort of an interesting push-pull of the lightness of the visuals and the almost dreamlike visuals. And it seems almost romantic, but then there's a realism to what their struggles are and what their concerns are. And I like the balance that she finds there. Yeah. And the relationship is lovely. The two actors playing these gentlemen have a really sweet chemistry, and and how the one who is not quite out yet, how he finds his way is quite touching.
Armando Espitia plays younger
Yes.
Yvonne, and
Young
Christian
Yvonne.
Vasquez plays younger Gerardo.
Yeah,
Um,
they've got a really nice way with each other, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the dreaminess of it is, I think, a part of what I found really appealing, because they sort of set it up as, you know, this is somebody who is older, but who is kind of constantly thinking about home and thinking about where he came from and how he misses it. And so the way that it kind of jumps back and forth in time, and you kind of have to figure out like where and when you are with these characters. It felt like the sort of snatches of, you know, visions you might have as you're falling asleep, or as you're, you know, like having a reverie about the past or whatever. Yeah, I think it's really beautifully constructed. I want to give a shout out to the editor here, who is Atchity, who again, like, comes from a doc background, worked on Detropia with this director, and XY Chelsea, and One of Us. So, like, you know, I think also maybe doesn't have a deep experience in narrative, but I think is really beautifully telling a story here.
And this was nominated for, and I'm looking it up while I talk to you, a couple of Spirit Awards, I want to say, right? Let's look it up. So yeah, best editing, now that you mention
Nice.
it, and
Okay.
also best first feature. So
Yeah.
while Heidi's been around for a long time, they consider this a first feature from her,
Yeah.
because it's a first narrative feature. Yeah, it's really lovely, really sweet. Where is it playing? Is it in theaters?
I believe it is in theaters at the moment, just for the you know, opening weekend. But I mean, it's Sony Classics is taking the film out, and it is. Hang on, I'm sorry, trying to pull this up right now. It's opening in New York and Los Angeles on the 25th. But you know, I imagine that it will be streaming, you know, within a month or two. But if you have the chance to see this, and certainly if you have a chance to see this projected, and you're in a place where you can, and it's, you know, it's really gorgeous. It's beautifully put together, and I just found it really moving, and I think really profound in terms of, you know, there is something about this movie that reminded me of like kind of really classic old school romances in movies. Like it's like the kind of sad love stories that usually have a train involved, you know, where somebody has to go somewhere, or like there's a war going on and that's what's keeping these people apart. You know, I think a lot of gay love stories exist in this notion of like, these two people could have a life together, but society is constantly getting in the way. And there's an element of that here. But I think the larger thing is like, these two people are building a life for themselves, but because they are Mexican and they're building this life for themselves in New York, and they don't have the proper documentation, they can never go home again. And I think that brings a real poignancy to it. And I think kind of touches upon larger issues that we're dealing with in the culture right now.
Yeah.
And I found that really powerful.
Yeah, and I know there have been conversations out there about who's allowed to tell whose story, you know, and this is a straight white American woman telling a story of queer Mexicans in love, and she's so intimate and empathetic toward them
Yes.
that I didn't feel any kind of like imposition of any kind of like cultural superiority ideology. She lets their story shine through.
And by the end of it, you come to understand why this is not just an outsider's perspective, and why this has, you know, this is in a lot of ways being told by, you know, people who are more directly involved with the situation.
Yes, I'm saying, go ahead.
I just want to jump in and say that we interviewed her over at Movie Phone, and the entire cast, entire crew was Mexican. She joked about being the only American on set at one point, and the story of these two guys is actually really close to her, to the point that it was, I don't want to spoil it, but
Good. Well, thank you for saying that. And I've interviewed Heidi and Rachel, and they're really cool. So anyway, so 7.5 is my number, Alonso. What is yours?
I said 9.5. I found just really moving. I'm gonna be watching this movie again. No
Okay.
question.
All right. So 8.5 is our number, and it is out there in the world for you to enjoy. And you
Yes, in theaters in New York and Los Angeles, and certainly expanding from there, depending on when it is you're watching this thing. Even thanks for watching, whenever it is that you're doing it. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. So much to talk about regarding this new episode of Loki, and also doing our monthly off the menu selection, where our subscribers choose a film that we haven't reviewed before to talk about. We'll be discussing Monsoon, starring Henry Golding. It's a film from 2020, strand released in the US. I think a lot of people might have missed it, but it's on Netflix now, and it's, really, there's a lot to say about it. So we'll be reviewing that, but that's exclusively for our subscribers. So to become one, go to patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. Christy, Marvel Monday, it's still happening. What's up? Where are we?
We're so close to the end. This week is Captain Marvel.
Woo.
Which just came out a couple of years ago. I went back and I rewatched our Breakfast All Day review of it. That is how recent it is. It's a thing that we have done on this show.
We're lapping ourselves.
Yeah. So tie your flannel around your waist and pump up the
Volume.
No Doubt and the TLC and join us for Captain Marvel.
Excellent. All right, everybody, have a great week. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.